All right. Today we're going to dive into one of the most significant challenges of our time, global wealth inequality. Let's unpack what that really means. Wow. This quote really just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It perfectly captures this fundamental tension in our modern economy that we're going to be exploring. The core idea is that even as all of this new wealth gets created, it's just not being shared equally.
So let's start by getting our heads around the sheer scale of the problem. What does this widening chasm actually look like in the real world?
Well, the data is pretty stark. I mean, by some measures, the richest 1% now hold nearly half of all global private wealth. And experts are now looking at this growing gap as more than just an economic issue. They see it as a critical threat to social and even economic stability itself. That brings us to a really critical question. What forces are actually powering this trend? You have to ask, what's the engine behind all this? The source material points to two main drivers that have really fundamentally reshaped our world. Okay, so let's talk about technology, because it's a real double-edged sword here. On one hand, you've got automation and AI, which are just these incredible engines for efficiency and creating new wealth. But, and it's a big but, on the other hand, that very same innovation is making a lot of traditional, often lower-skilled jobs just disappear. And this is where it gets real, This is the human cost. When those jobs are gone, the workers who are displaced face a massive uphill battle. If they can't get access to new training or education, it becomes incredibly difficult to find their footing again. And that doesn't just affect their income, it affects their family's ability to plan for any kind of future. All right, so the second big driver is the globalization of finance. Think about it. Money can now zip across the world in an instant, always looking for the highest return. This often means that big corporations will shift their operations to places where labor is cheapest, which can push wages down back home. The result? You get a system that critics argue is way too focused on maximizing profits for shareholders, sometimes at the real expense of the well-being of their workers. So we've seen the gap and what's driving it. But why is this extreme inequality so dangerous? What's the so what? Well, the consequences go way beyond just dollars and cents. It's about how that wealth translates directly into power. And here's the kicker. Immense wealth often translates directly into political influence. When the most affluent people can shape policies and regulations to benefit themselves, it creates what the source calls an uneven playing field. It basically undermines the fairness of the entire system for everybody else. And this point really reframes the whole issue. The real tragedy here isn't just about the concentration of money. It's about wasted talent, missed opportunities, and the lost potential of millions of people who are being held back, not because they lack ability, but because they lack opportunity. Now, I know this can all start to feel pretty daunting, but the situation is not hopeless. The source material also outlines a path forward, suggesting a multi-pronged approach to start closing this gap. So what does that path forward look like? 4 key strategies are proposed here. First up is universal access to quality education. It's seen as absolutely essential to break the cycle of poverty. Second, we're talking about more progressive tax policies, where higher earners contribute a larger percentage. Third is strengthening our social safety nets, to help people weather those unexpected economic storms. And finally, exploring bold new ideas like universal basic income, or UBI, which could provide a financial floor for everyone as our economy keeps changing. So this brings us to the final and maybe the most important part of our explainer today. All of these issues, the tech, the globalization, the policies, they all seem to boil down to one central challenge for our society. And there it is. That's the ultimate question we all have to grapple with. There is absolutely no easy answer here. But how we choose to navigate this complex terrain, finding a way to keep innovating while making sure no one gets left behind, that's what's going to define the stability and maybe even the soul of our global community for decades to come.